Pregame show. Joining us now from Indianapolis, our NFL insider for JAKIB Media, Mr. John McMullen. John, I love asking you this question, and I feel like I've asked you this question more than any other question. The Indianapolis Colts are one of the worst teams in the NFL, at least prior to Jeff Saturday being there, in allowing sacks. Will today be the day that Jonathan Gannon gets more aggressive and goes after the quarterback, Johnny Mac?
Boy, I think you would have had a better chance if it were Sam Ehlinger. I think the fact that Indianapolis smartly went back to Matt Ryan, because he gives them their best chance to win. Not saying it's great, but best chance to win. So it was the proper move. And by the way, Frank Reich wasn't allowed to do that. So that's why he kind of went away from that. But that's a whole nother conversation for the Colts pregame show, Colts 365. They have some issues, but no, I mean, Jonathan Gannon has the philosophy he has. One of the reasons Ndamukong Suh is here and Linval Joseph is here is because they want to play those light boxes. They want to play the quarters coverage on the back end, and they're getting players to fill in for what they lost, and with Jordan Davis and Marlon Tuipulotu. So that gives you another indication that the Eagles are not shifting away from that philosophy. And, they do have the third-ranked defense in the NFL, guys. So everything is contextual. I talk about context every week. Everything is contextual with this team and this league as a whole.
Hey, John, on the Friday injury report, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, that is considered limited. A.J. with the ankle, Devontae with the knee. How closely should we be watching them today?
I would look at A.J. very close. He's looked fine during practice, but I think you saw him last week, and he was not the same guy after he turned that ankle. So I think, you'll probably know pretty quickly, Gunner, maybe a series or two if he's healthy, if he's himself, because that was a big hit to the Eagles offense, and I think a lot of people overlooked that somewhat, at least, and they really, really struggled. Now you add in the fact that there's no Dallas Goedert. I mean, that is a huge loss, and I won't say it's been overlooked this week, but because of the additions, because of the high-profile nature of bringing in Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh, people have kind of glossed over what losing Dallas Goedert means to this team, means to this offense. I don't think there's a bigger drop from starter to backup on the Eagles team when it comes from Dallas Goedert to Jack Stoll.
I agree. John, speaking of, Joseph and Sue, any indication whatsoever which one or if both of those guys will be active today and how much they actually expect for them to play?
Yeah, they're going to play. I mean, Linval's 100%. I would put Ndamukong Suh at 99.5%. I mean, they brought him in here for half a season and a playoff run to play. And, this is an interesting situation, Seth, because I think the rest of the league is going to look at what's going on here. And if this succeeds, I think you might see more of this in years to come, where you have these veteran players who've made a lot of money, have had a lot of success, and they don't want to play for the veteran minimum. But, they got a little bit more than that from the Eagles, but they didn't have to go to training camp. They didn't have to go through the grind of a 17-game season, and now they're going to try to come in mid-season and go chase a ring. So if this works, I think you're going to see more and more of this going forward.
John, one of the things I know I'm concerned about going into this game, and I know a lot of Eagles fans are concerned about, are facing guys like Michael Pittman, facing guys like Paris Campbell, who did a heck of a job with the game-winning touchdown last week against the Raiders on basically a 7-yard slant that he just took to the house. And that's a play that I know a lot of Eagles fans look at and say, soft coverage, you can't do that in this situation. And then if you're doing that, you're also going to have a guy like Jonathan Taylor run up the middle of this defensive line. So going into, what do you think the philosophy is going to be for Jonathan Gannon in going up against Jonathan Taylor and also defending against two pretty top-tier wide receivers in both Pittman and Campbell?
Well, I mean, And I brought it up when I talked about the additions. They want to play what they want to play. They want to play the light boxes to make sure they can do things on the back end. That's for the future, right? If you're going to go where you want to go, and that's win a Super Bowl, then you're starting to talk about the Patrick Mahomes of the world, the Josh Allens of the world. Even if Joe Burrow makes a run, Tua makes a run with Miami, all these high-powered passing offenses. In this little run the Eagles are in right now, it's about different. Indianapolis is more impressive running the football, at least when Jonathan Taylor's right. And he got right last week. He ran for 147. We're going to see Tennessee coming up with Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and the New York Giants. It's a little bit different. But it's clear to me that's what that highlighted. When you bring in Linval Joseph, it tells me the Eagles don't want to put more people in the box. They don't want to do it. And they're going to lean on the philosophy, and they think it's right. And we'll see. I do think they should be a little bit more malleable from week to week, sort of like the offense is. And they should look at the opponent, game plan a little bit more to the strengths of the opponent. But then they're going to lean back on Matt Ryan, his experience, this guy's a borderline future Hall of Famer. That's how good he's been. And if he wins that Super Bowl, I think he might be a Hall of Famer. Now, obviously, he's not that player, but I think the Eagles are going to lean on that reputation and say, we got to play our quarters coverage. We got to play our cover 2 or cover 6 and everything like that.
Hey John, the Colts have the 4th-ranked defense coming into this game today, but they're out without 2 of their best players, Shaquille Leonard and Kwity Paye. Now, when you look at what the Eagles offense didn't do consistently Monday night, where do you think they should have more success against this Indianapolis defense, throwing the ball or running the ball?
Throwing the ball, Gunner, because what Indy does have is DeForest Buckner right in the middle, Grover Stewart right in the middle. I think, Stewart, everybody knows how good Buckner is, right? But Stewart has turned into one of the best nose tackles in the NFL. He's been dominant. We don't get to see Colts a ton in Philadelphia, obviously. I don't think people realize how good this defense is, as you mentioned, number 4 in the NFL. So they've been very good, even without, Kwity Paye's been banged up for a while. Shaq Leonard's been banged up for a while. They're still really good. They're still really talented in this era. If you talk to people in Philadelphia, they think their defense stinks, and that's the 3rd-ranked defense. Yeah. So you'll see some of that with Indy, but they're the 4th-ranked defense, and that sounds impressive. But that's sort of the way of the modern NFL.
John, doesn't that philosophy kind of scare you a little bit? They've got all these good guys in the middle, so we got to throw the ball. I think that's the same type of philosophy that got the Eagles in trouble in the first half of last week's game, because the first game that they played Washington, they could not run the ball at all because they kept trying to get wide on them, and those guys are getting penetration and getting tackles for loss and kept putting the Eagles behind the chains, and they just decided to just abandon the running game and start throwing the ball. I think that's what hurt them last week. Only 4 runs in the entire first half last week. Miles Sanders is too much of a weapon for them not to at least keep the defense honest. I think if they go in here today and it's their intention to come out throwing the ball again and they don't execute and they get these 3 and outs, or they get a penalty and it pushes them back behind the chains, it's just problematic for me. You have this piece of your game. Why not utilize it? It makes no sense to me. Even if the statistics say, okay, you should fare better throwing the ball than running, that doesn't necessarily mean that you just got to completely abandon it.
Yeah, I agree. That was the problem last week, Seth. If you remember, they came out with the strip sack from Josh Sweat, and they had the short field, and they ran the ball, and they ran it successfully, and they go in for the early touchdown. Then they kind of abandon it. It's all pass from that point forward in the first half. There's got to be a better balance. The Eagles have proven they can run on anybody. So they can't go into that philosophy where it's one or the other. There's got to be more balance. But I do think if you look at how do you attack Indianapolis, if A.J. Brown's healthy, I think you can attack them outside. Now, as I mentioned to Gunner, we got to see if he's healthy. He wasn't healthy last week. Now he's going to play. He looked fine to me in practice. There was no noticeable limp, but he was not the same guy last week after he turned his ankle. So the Eagles have to be a little bit quicker. If they realize that AJ's not himself again, they have to be a little quicker with the adjustments.
John, before we let you go, what's your prediction for Eagles-Colts?
Yeah, I think the Eagles are going to bounce back. I think this is sort of a get-right game. I think, people have gone overboard. This is still the best team in the NFL. They had a bad game, and it wasn't just the run defense. In fact, the run defense gave up 3 yards a carry. They gave up their longest rush they allowed was 11. The bigger problem was third down football, situational football, lack of communication on the back end. Offensively, we talked about they got away from the running game. They played tempo. They didn't realize sort of the personality of the game, and the defense was on the field so much. They have to play smarter football. I joked the Eagles were the most well-rounded team through their 8-0 start. That was as well-rounded a loss as you will ever see because everybody contributed. Offense, defense, special teams, coaching staff. The Eagles will get right. They're a good football team. The Indianapolis Colts are not a good football team. They'll win the game.
The Eagles will win the game. That's no score? No points? Betting? Nothing?
Relatively easy. I'm
Relatively
going 31-18.
31-18. We'll take that. John McMullen, our NFL insider, joining us from Lucas Oil Stadium. Johnny Mac, thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
I like it. Relatively easy. Let's get a laugher after what was not at all a laugher on Monday night, unfortunately. We'll be breaking down the Birds versus Colts a little bit more in a few here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel.